Hey everybody, I bought an autographed signed copy of the Cardinal Black January Came Close album featuring, as far as I'm concerned, Chris Buck on the guitar. Thought I'd do a little review of it. I hope you'll consider watching. Well, I bought this album and it's signed and the signatures are under the cellophane, so I'm debating whether I was going to open it. You know, part of me, I feel like I should open it and maybe show you some pictures of what the inside of the album looks like. And then I decided, well, I don't know, if maybe I'll just leave it sealed. It does have signatures. You know, I wasn't sure I wanted to review this album just because Chris Buck is such a major figure in the YouTube guitar community. And I don't know, I didn't want it to seem like I was just trying to scarf onto all his viewers and internet heft by sort of making a review of his album. That's definitely not the case. I just happen to think he's an excellent guitar player. You know, all the YouTube guitar players, I was thinking about that before I did this video, all the YouTube guitar players are really good. I mean, you might, you know, on YouTube there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of BS, a lot of phonies. I'm sure there are some out there in the guitar community on YouTube. But really, I was just thinking of all the main YouTube guitar channels, you know, Music is Win and Rhett Show, Rick Beato, Paul Davids, Samurai Guitarist. I don't want to miss any, but all those guys are great players. And I think that Chris Buck is an extra great player. I mean, he is, and I like his playing because he's got an old school sensibility, yet I would describe him as a modern player, particularly the way he bends. His bends are just, he takes traditional blues bends, but he just does them with such precision and also kind of out-of-the-box phrasing and everything. He is a really fine guitar player. I always say he was born too late. He's lucky to be young in some ways, but it's too bad he wasn't born in 1952 or something. We might be thinking of him like we think of a lot of the great guitar players. I really believe that. But I listened to this album a couple times in the car. And I was pretty familiar with several of the tracks. I actually played in the little Chris Buck Play on This Track challenge or forum or whatever. I played my little version of Tell Me How It Feels and Warm Love with the wah-wah. Because I don't know. I initially forgot to mention, another thing I like about Chris Buck is he knows a good rock and roll beast guitar when he comes across one, and that's the Highway 1 Strat. He's one of YouTube's biggest proponents of the Highway 1 Strat, which is a great guitar. I've got a couple. It's just a rock and roll beast. I know he plays on the Rev Star and some other things now, and he has his signature line. That's all great, but you can tell he loves that old Highway 1 he's got, and I like watching him. He's got one of the earlier types of Highway 1, but he sings its praises, as I do, and my little old YouTube channel doesn't get all that many views, but some of the videos I've put up that get the most views are my reviews of my Highway 1s. It's just a great guitar, and so I always get a kick out of seeing Chris Buck when he plays the Highway 1. It's in my opinion one of the best production level guitars Fender's made in years for rock and roll and blues anyway. Definitely. I haven't played them all, but it's definitely the best one I know about. If you just want a rock and roll beast machine, and he's a big proponent of the Highway 1.
Yeah.
really good songs. Um, I didn't want to say too much about this album. It's first of all, it's a really professional album. I mean, it's not like a YouTube guy releasing his own music. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I probably be in that category myself, but this seems like a really polished commercial album. Um, I will say, I'm just going to say this. I'm not going to defer, or I'm just going to review it like I would any other album. I will say, I think Chris Buck's role is of an ensemble team player, which is good. You know, I mean, a good guitarist should be able to do that. And he definitely does that on this album. I wouldn't say it's a heavy guitar album. He's got a lot of really nice guitars in there, but they're often kind of in the mix. The other thing I would say is it's, you know what? I was just thinking now, if I heard this album and didn't know anything about Chris Buck, or, you know, I hadn't watched any of his videos on Jimmy Page or John Lennon, you know, have you ever seen him play his version of Get Back? He kind of breaks it down, but, or like Till There Was You and some of the, if I didn't know it was Chris Buck, I'm not sure I would describe it as a rock album. It's kind of an R&B album. Some parts of it kind of reminded me of an updated, kind of modernized version of like the old soul I used to hear in Detroit, like, was it Al Green or, I don't know, Curtis Mayfield. I'm not familiar enough with that kind of music to drop a lot of names, but, you know, there was a real smooth kind of R&B. Back when, before hip-hop and everything, there was a lot of really good soul music, and the musicianship was excellent, but I wouldn't call it rock and roll. But so I would say that it's pretty keyboard heavy. So numerous songs kind of just start with sort of that real atmospheric keyboard, maybe kind of a drum beat, and the guitar is very complementary to that, and kind of understated often, which is what you want. It's in the service of the song. When it does swell up, it sounds kind of maybe like a Scorpions record, or it does have a modern, I'm going to call 80s rock, but like a good, I don't know, it sounds kind of like that to me. Always good guitar. But a lot of the songs are very kind of, not subdued, but they're intense, but very kind of slow pulse, and they start with just keyboards and kind of atmospheric singing, and it kind of builds. A lot of those builds are where you tend to hear Chris Buck play guitar. I really like Rise Up is good. Of course, I think a couple of the songs that have been around on YouTube for a while, like that Tell Me How It Feels and Warm Love, are really good. I would say the rocker on here might be I'm Ready. And I kind of wish they did more like that on here. Tied Up in Blue is the good final song. Terra Firma. It's kind of funny. It's got three sides, so I'm not sure how that works. Like I said, I didn't open it, and I have no plans to open it yet. Look right there. You know what? I'm an old man, but I was raised in the Midwest, and I still kind of have that. I won't say Anglophile because I think they're Welsh. That would be bad. But that kind of British invasion. It has that kind of like a. I don't know. There's just something about the sky. It looks like some of those old Moody Blue albums, or Who's Next or something, where you just see these guys kind of out in the. Has that, I don't know why, but it has that kind of British look to me, which is sort of cool. Americans always like that, you know. I guess one final thought I have is I wish they should add someone to this band, I think, to make it more of a rock and roll band, because I watch Chris Buck's channel, and he's a ace rock guitar player. He's an ace guitar player, but he plays rock and roll. I mean, he plays like rock and roll, and he knows a lot about rock and roll, and he plays it really, really well. So I think they need a guitar player in there to kind of back Mr. Buck and the rest of the band. Every once in a while does something like that, you know, or, I mean, you know, get some rock and roll boogie in there, maybe some power chords as the basis of the song, not kind of coming in at the end. And maybe replace some of the keyboards, which have that kind of modern keyboard sound, with the Hammond B3 and a grand piano. But the musicianship is excellent. And I think, like I said, I think the songwriting is legitimately good. That would be one thing, one observation I had. I'm not sure I would call it a rock album, and I would like to hear it be more of a rock album. Like I said, but anyway, it's definitely a great album. And so, like I said, I was a little awkward about reviewing it just because he's so current in YouTube. But I happen to think he's a great guitar player, and I like those songs. But that would be one thing they need. Some Zeppelin type riff rock. Chris Buck's a great riff player. They need some songs based on riffs, and some songs based on great rock and roll rhythm guitar, and not quite so much keyboard. But I think the keyboard is excellent. But maybe complement that with some songs that are a little more guitar oriented. But it's definitely a good album, and it makes me feel a little better about music because, so much music now. People put out music. I put out music. I've got some hymns coming out, the newest, hottest, latest 200-year-old Methodist hymns. But I love putting out music, and people listen to hymns, by the way. But this is just a legit good album. I mean, it's, if you just wouldn't bought it in the store and you didn't know anything about YouTube or anything, you just think it was a good album. I could see it being played in all kinds of places. It's really well put together. I think it's engineered well, produced well. I'm not even trying to mention all the names. I think that main singer is named Tom Hollister. I hope I'm not. I'm going to stop before I say anything wrong. But that'll be one takeaway: is they ought to get some more riff rock and roll, rhythm guitar, and maybe a couple songs with organ and piano on it. And I think this thing, even the same songs, because the songs are well done. There's good songwriting on here. But it's a good album. And Chris Buck is a great guitar player. Like I said, if he had been born in 1950, I'm sure we'd be talking about him in a whole other way. So he's lucky to be young, but he's playing on YouTube. And you know what? The other thing is that shows YouTube is kind of where a lot of good music is still alive. Like people say, is the guitar dead? Sometimes I feel like it's dead. By the way, I played Saturday night in Jack Black for a party, and it was a private party, and it was for Paramount Pictures, and Jack Black showed up, and that was pretty cool. So,
welcome to center stage, Mr. Jack Black. So we've rehearsed this song for a few weeks now, on weekends. Wait a second, these aren't the lyrics to The Devil Went Down to Georgia. That looks like Jolene, 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 Jolene.
There's still a lot of music around, but if you ever feel like guitar is dead, this shows you that maybe it's different because a lot of the music is on YouTube. And I wonder how many of these they sell. Like, I don't even know, do they make CDs or cassettes? This is vinyl. But I'm sure most people listen to it on YouTube, or I think I listen to it on iTunes in my car. But I listened to it about 3 times, and it's legitimately a good album. Needs to be more rock and roll. Needs more Chris Buck riffs, Chris Buck rock and roll driving rhythm guitar, Ray Davies and the Kinks, John Lennon, Jimmy Page, but it's all there. That's my takeaway for maybe their next album, if they care what I think. But I definitely recommend it because you hear good guitar laced all the way through this, and a lot of those bends he does, and just really, really, really good, effective guitar playing all through it, laced through. And some great solos. That Tell Me How It Feels is a really good solo, and I'm Ready's got a good solo. So he's got good solos all the way through it. But, well, I reviewed it. I wasn't sure, but I bought it. I paid for it, so I said I'm going to review it on the channel. Thanks. God bless.